Great. So good evening, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Lewis, and I'm joined here this evening by my colleague Gareth.
Good
Also,
evening.
just thanks, Gareth. So Gareth is going to be like in the background, if you like, to answer all those questions you might have. I'm going to cover all the logistics, so we'll look at student finance. But what I will say is that the figures that we have is literally intended to be a guide for you this evening, because these are based on 2023. It's just because at the moment we haven't received the latest figures for 2024 entry, but hopefully these should give you a bit of an insight into what to expect. However, the application process, how the repayments work, that kind of thing, that kind of logistical things, we're not anticipating to change, so that is all definitely still relevant for you. So as said, please do use that chat function for any questions you have. So what are we actually going to cover? So we'll look at some main pots of money, and what that money is used for. We'll look at some of the additional support that's available. So the good news is it's not just about the loans. There is some additional funding out there available too. We'll then look at the logistics of how to apply for the student finance, and then how the repayments work as well. So it's like in sections, so it will follow a logical order. And I'll leave you with some other bits and bobs of things, some just essential things that you need to know, and that's helpful to know for you to kind of support your applications going forward. And entwined within there, there's also some advice around like budgeting and thinking about that kind of like those transitions and that affordability of university for you. So first of all, what I'd like to do is put it all into context. So, of course, at the moment, you may or may not have already submitted your application, but that's only one part of essentially going to university. Working alongside your UCAS application, the next thing to think about is, of course, this student finance. Now, student finance won't open. Well, fingers crossed, all being well. Again, they haven't told us the exact date. However, it's usually around February half term. You'll then have until May half term to make your application. Now, it's really important to note here that it's important that you meet that deadline when it comes out and that it's set, because then that way they will guarantee the funding to be in place ready for you to start your program. So that's a worry straight off your mind. Get it in, the sooner the better, and then you know you don't need to think about that anymore. What I would also say, as you will see here, as you kind of like work along your UCAS timeline, for those of you, once you've submitted, you'll start being invited to things called like offer holder days, applicant days. Different universities do them all different, but they are essentially the same kind of format. And essentially what that is enabling you to do is make a firm and insurance choice. So of course you might have up to 5 universities on your application. And then you need to decide which one will be your firm, which one will be your insurance. Now, you will have until around May time to also make that decision, but you need to get your student finance in before. So often we get asked, okay, what shall I do in that situation with regards to applying? Now, this is one of the key reasons why students delay making their application. Now, take the tip from us, do not delay making your student finance application because you're not sure exactly which university will be your firm choice. And the reason is that you can easily go in and change which one it will be, via the student finance portal, which will be online, at a later date once you've decided. That's fine. All you need to do for an application perspective for student finance is just choose one of them that's on your UCAS form to get in the system. So essentially, if you then think we've then got to May, you would have made your firm and insurance choice. You would have also submitted your student finance form. And by then you would have applied, hopefully, for your student accommodation as well. If you haven't, you'll still have a bit longer to do that. But again, it's another important factor and something that it does really go alongside your student finance as well, because then once you know how much you're going to get, you can then work out what accommodation options are going to be more feasible than others. So let's look at the two main pots of money. So the first one being the tuition fee loan. Now, this is going to pay towards like the teaching, so the specialists that are going to be delivering these courses, the facilities, the updating of software, all of this kind of thing, and maintaining the learning resources that are available to you. And then the second pot of money is essentially going to be for you as a student, and something that's going to support your time financially whilst you're away at university. So that could be if you want to get involved in like clubs and societies, so to build on your social life, and support in like those everyday costs like food bills, and of course a big one being your accommodation, as in like rent if you've decided to live away. So we'll look at them in a little bit more depth. So the tuition fee loan, this is the really straightforward one. So for this year, this figure has not changed. So you can apply for £9,250 per year of study. Now, that's the maximum universities can charge with regards to like each year of the undergraduate study. It means that for this, it's not means tested. So in other words, you apply for a set amount. You can either have that amount or you can apply for part loans, for example, if there's a different funding stream, if you're in a position to do that. And essentially, it doesn't matter what the household income is or any other factors, and you will just apply for that amount and then that's what's awarded. And the good news is it's nice and straightforward because it's paid straight to the university. So there's none of this, oh, they're going to give you this money and then you're going to have to think, oh, on a monthly basis, I've got to pay the university my tuition fee loans on this date and that date. And there's none of that. It's just all sorted out for you. So it's nice and simple. Then the second pot of money is going to be the maintenance loan. Now, this one is a little bit more complex, but essentially it's based around three factors, and it's these things that will differentiate how much money you might receive. So these three categories being, where are you studying? So, for example, are you studying inside London or outside of London? Where you live whilst you're studying. So have you decided to stay locally and you're going to live at home? Or will it be household or based on your household income? So, for example, household income could be things like, of course, salary, wages that are coming into the household. It could be second homes, pensions, investments, and there's quite a comprehensive list. And there's lots of information on the Student Finance England website, and that will tell you some of the things that they would consider with regards to like household income, so that you know what to evidence when you apply. With regards to living, just to kind of go back to that point, for those of you who have decided to go a bit further away and you're going to have university halls or private accommodation or whatever the case is, the point being that you have moved away from home, again, that would change how much maintenance loan you potentially receive. Now, that next point on there around student bank accounts. Now, what I recommend as part of your research and preparing for your next steps as a student, as parents and guardians, this is definitely something to be looking at as well. So have a shop around and consider student bank accounts, because when it comes to applying for this maintenance loan, Student Finance England will ask for details of a bank account. Now, these bank accounts are designed for students, so they come with various perks. So it could be rail cards and various other discounts and various other financial incentives and perks which are designed just for students. So I'd always recommend checking those out because there's tons of deals and it's really easy to get hold of. The other final point around these is that there are long course loans available too. And so if we've got any aspiring nurses, paramedics, people that want to work in healthcare, for example, just to name some examples. And they tend to be a bit longer courses, and what that means is that there is additional funding available because, of course, those courses are longer, so you may very well be at university in accommodation for longer, and you're going to need a bit more financial support. So here, this one, what are you entitled to? So as I mentioned at the very start of the presentation, is that these figures are based on 2023 entry. Now, what I can say is that these amounts would have gone up, but I can't tell you exactly what they'll be at the moment, but fingers crossed it should come out soon. But here it's just giving you a general kind of idea that depending on which category you might fall in, a minimum and a maximum amount students were entitled to. So for many students, you may very well be falling into that middle category where you're going to be studying away, but you're still outside of London. So the minimum amount you would have for the 2023 those students received was 4,651, up to just shy of £10,000. However, for some of you, you might decide that you're studying locally and you're going to live at home. So the amount has dropped a little bit because student finance do assume that you'll have some more financial support and that your overheads would be less because you're going to be living at home. So again, like I say, just to reaffirm, these are just indicative figures. And what I will say is that this is for each year of study. So you would renew your student finance application on a yearly basis whilst you're at university, just to make sure that any of your circumstances, if they've changed at all, and what would fluctuate between the minimum and the maximum amount would be those three factors that we've just discussed. So whether that's where you're living, where you're studying, etc., and what the household income is and things like that. So we'll look at some additional funding. So the good news is there is some additional funding available. So the middle point there around university scholarships and bursaries, please do check these out. So it's certainly something you can do as parents, guardians, as well as students. So do check these out because so for us, for example, we have a University of Lincoln scholarship. And that's worth £500 of every year of study for 3 years, dependent on household income. So it's worthwhile checking that out. Now, some of these scholarships and bursaries, depending on the university you're going to, you're interested in, they may or may not ask you for an additional application. However, it's now when I'll say, when you apply for your student finance, just make sure you're ticking the boxes to say that you're happy for your basic information to be shared with the universities you're interested in, because then that way we'll get a basic overview. So then we can make a judgment call with regards to what you might be eligible for and automatically enroll you into any scholarships and bursaries and you might be eligible for. So that's nice and straightforward. So you might then get a notification say, oh, by the way, you're getting this additional funding, so you'll be quids in. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more around the nursing midwifery and the Learning Support Fund, but also just to note that all of this additional money, so scholarship or bursary, is all going to be money that you get to keep. So it's not something that you'd have to pay back. There is, so for this, of course, is a very popular aspect of many courses. So being able to study abroad, for instance, of course, you're going to still have living costs. So there is additional loans that you can take out to kind of support that funding. I know that like placements and things like that, lots of our courses will have placements involved and they tend to be paid ones as well. So of course that's going to be, even though you're studying away from the university, you're still actually going to be able to get income. So there is money available. So for those of you who may well be considering the healthcare route, this slide is showing you all of the applicable courses as it is at the moment with regards to who would be eligible to apply for that Learning Support Fund. And what I would do is do a little bit more research around this and it will tell you about how much you can potentially receive on a means and a non-means tested basis. So there's a potential for actually quite a bit of support, financial support here, with regards to which would support with costs between, say, for example, like going on placements, like the transport costs and things like that, as well as general living costs. So it's definitely worthwhile checking these out. So this, I just wanted to kind of like say here, like if you've not already and you've got any questions about any part of what we've been through so far. So we've looked at what the two main pots of money are, what the additional funding is, as well as um, some general kind of like indicative amounts you could potentially get. So if you've got questions bespoke to you and you want to ask them, throw them in the chat, and my colleagues and that they will do their best to answer them for you. So this section, I now want to talk about the actual application process. So I thought it would be handy to just start off with some top tips. So first of all, like just make sure that you take your time over this. So we're introducing it to you this evening. I've already said that it's going to open around February half term until May half term to apply for it. But the good news is it's all done online. So very similar to the UCAS application, you'll go on, you'll create an account. And what I suggest is that you do it all together. And so, for instance, that you work with your child to do this. And if you're not sure, you've never like applied for student finance before, have a little look on their website. It will tell you what evidence they'd be looking for. And then when it comes to actually registering, like I say, it's done online and it's all done in methodical order. You don't need to do it all at once. It will save your progress so you can dip in and out of it as well. So it doesn't need to be an onerous task for you. Do make sure that you just check each section as you go along and that you're providing all the documents that they are asking for. So we know that it can take around 8 to 10 weeks for an application to be turned around. But if in the meantime they contact you and they say something like, oh, they're looking for additional evidence, please don't panic about that. It doesn't mean you've necessarily done something wrong. It's just that they're looking for a bit more supporting evidence around a particular aspect of the application. It could be a random spot check, for example. So please don't worry. And also, don't leave it until the last minute. I must admit, it was something that I did, and when I did it, it was back when it was all paper based. It wasn't online, unfortunately, and my parents aren't particularly tech savvy. So yes, it got a bit stressful, put it that way. So we are introducing it now so that hopefully you can go away and have a look at things like evidence and have a look at discounts and the student bank accounts and that kind of thing to kind of support this application to make it nice and smooth. Covered that. So the final part now, so we've looked at how the application process will work. And so now this is around the repayments of the loan. Now, again, this is one of the areas that I would say we probably get the most questions around rather than the actual application process. And again, just to kind of reiterate, the figures I'm giving you are based on 2023 entry. So there could be a bit of a change here, but I wouldn't anticipate a lot. So first of all, the repayments will work automatically through the UK tax system. So whether that's the pay as you earn if you're employed or a yearly tax return if you become self-employed. So this is for the student. So when you finish. Now, I'll put this into context for you. So imagine you have just finished your third year of your degree. You're probably going to finish around June time of that. So the summer of the third year. Then all being well, as long as all the assessments are passed, you'll then graduate in around September, October time of that year. You'll then won't be eligible to start making payments on your loan until the April after you graduate. So there's that bit of breathing space, and it is worked up on the tax year, essentially, is what it's aligned to. When it comes to the actual figures, you repay 9% of your earnings that are over the threshold. So, for example, at the minute it was set at £25,000 a year. So, if your earnings are below that amount, you wouldn't make anything in that April, no payments. From April and beyond, I should say. However, if it's on or above there, you're going to start to make payments, and I'll put that into context in the next slide. There is a finite payment period, and it is set at 40 years. So what that means is that it doesn't matter how much money has been paid off or how much money is still left of that loan, of those loans, after that payment period, it will be wiped clean. So a busy slide, so I'll quickly talk through these. So as we know, being going off to university and having a degree is going to and should increase your earning potential, and a graduate salary is arguably higher. So I would expect you to be progressing through your career, and as you do that over time, your salary will increase, which would then mean that you'll start earning on and above that threshold. So for context sake here, take £30,000 a year you're earning. That will work out at £2,500 per month. So it's all done on pre-tax. However, the threshold is set at £25,000 a year, which is £2,083 per month. Okay. However, if you're earning £30,000 a year, you're going to be £417 over the threshold on a monthly basis. And you only pay 9% of what you're over, not that total amount, only the amount you're over the threshold by. So for any mathematicians that are in the audience now, I'm sure you've already worked out how much this is going to be. So 9% of £417 would be £37.53. So somebody who is earning 30 grand a year is going to be paying just under £40 per month towards their student loan. So hopefully that kind of like shows you that actually the repayments are really manageable, and it's not like a traditional loan in the sense how much you've borrowed. It's actually how much you earn, not how much you've borrowed, is when it comes to working out repayments. So to look at that in a bit further, so as you progress through your career, your earning potential will increase. So if you're then earning £32,000 a year, it would work out at £52.50 on a monthly basis. So, and you see £40,112.50 per month. So it's relative to how much you're earning. And that's what keeps it all like affordable, essentially. And what I will say is that, say, for example, so this happened to me where for a period of time, I was earning on the like on and over the threshold. So I started making payments. However, my career changed and then I dipped below the threshold. So it meant that I just stopped making payments. You don't need to tell Student Finance England, it's all just done automatically. However, that time, that for me at the time, it was set at 30 years. So, but that clock still keeps ticking. So even if your repayment threshold has dropped, so you're not making any payments, the time still keeps ticking. However, now that I'm earning above that threshold again, I'm now making payments again. So it will fluctuate dependent on how much you're earning. So some other important bits and bobs to kind of leave you with. So as I mentioned earlier, this is how long the process can take to get your application turned around. Now, how Student Finance England know that you have enrolled at university is the university you've chosen will let them know. So once you're formally enrolled with that university, they will notify Student Finance England, and then they will release the payments. So they will pay the tuition fee loan to the university, and then the maintenance loan will come in its first installment to you as a student into that student bank account, if that's what you've gone for. What I will say here is that to think from a budgeting perspective, so that you can start thinking about like accommodation, the cost of living, and things like that. These are all big decisions to make. What I suggest you do is have a look at the Student Finance website. There are plenty of calculators around online for student finance, and they will ask you for some basic details. And then they'll give you an indicative amount of how much you could potentially have from a maintenance loan perspective. If you take that amount and then divide it by 3, that'll be the 3 installments you'll get throughout the year. And if you divide it by 12, you'll get more of a weekly spend. So then you can think about how much money you're going to have and start thinking about how much rent you're going to have, how much you need for food, etc., and this kind of thing, and if there's any potential top-ups available. So around like whether it's working for a university as a student ambassador, or whether it's getting yourself signed up for discounts, whether it's those additional funding, additional needs funding, and things like that as well. So any students that are in receipt of the DSA, for example, they would be eligible to apply for additional funding as well, or if you're on those long course loans and that as well. So again, it will bring all of those kind of factors into play as well. Some other bits and bobs that you need to know as well, and just because we get lots of questions around this, so say for instance your child starts at a particular university, and then after a certain amount of time they then move to a different one. That's fine. Student Finance England are used to dealing with this, and they would tell you what to do next, and it's okay to move. Equally, if you start at university and then come out of it, again, they would tell you about how that would work. Interest, credit files, things like that. So there are interest, there is interest on these loans, and it starts from when the first payment is made. And I never in presentations quote how much the interest is, because it can fluctuate. Of course it does. But again, this would be on the Student Finance England website, so do check that out if you're interested to know. Credit files, the only time really it should negatively impact on a credit file is if you've defaulted on a payment. But essentially, why would you? Because it's automatically set up through the UK tax system, as we've talked about. However, if you are at the time become self-employed as a student, so following your graduation, there is a setup process, and they would tell you how to do that, so you can sort that out individually. Mortgage applications, so there shouldn't be any refusal of mortgage applications around just because student finance. So like for me, for example, when I was looking at property and they just need to know about it so that they can work out the affordability aspect of it, not so that they can refuse it. And if you do go and work abroad, then you would still be eligible for payments. So the last pointers are, do remember, research all the support that is available to you, and then you're making the right choice for you. So think about like the cost of living in that area, where the accommodation is, how much the accommodation will be, these kind of things. And remember to use that budgeting tip that I gave. So have a look at the calculator, divide the amount by 3 and then by 12, you'll get a weekly spend, and then you can work out a budget from there. Do keep an eye out for the release of the application dates. So I would recommend following Student Finance England on one of their social media websites, because they are particularly responsive and they do send out regular info and things on those. So do check those out. And remember that you won't make any payments until you're earning on or above that threshold. Now, what that amount will be, of course, for 2024, there's a bit of uncertainty at the minute, but keep an eye out. Again, look at those social media handles. They will hopefully keep you informed. But as information comes out, we naturally share it with schools and that anyway. So if you don't hear it from them, you'll hear it through the school or college, I am certain. So that kind of concludes the main part, if you like. So we've looked at how this is all going to fit into your UCAS application, what the kind of things that you'll need to be paying for, some additional support, and then how the logistics around applying and how the repayments work. Now, I'm sure you've probably been asking lots of questions, and hopefully my colleagues have been busy replying to all of those. But what I would say is that even at the end of this evening, that doesn't mean we're then not available to speak to. Absolutely, we are. So we always want to support as much as we can, whether it's you as a parent, a guardian, or whether it's you as the student. So there's plenty of ways to get in touch with us. There's our contact number on our email address. We've also got lots of information on our website. What I would say is that, as I mentioned at the very start of the evening, the next step for anybody who has submitted their application, they've now got an offer. Please do come along to our offer holder days. Lots of universities will be offering these, and it's certainly something that I would always encourage students to go along to, and you as parents and guardians as well. So, like how we would do it at Lincoln is that you'll have separate timetables. So, your child would go off to their own sessions, their academic sessions, and you'll be there with current applicants who have applied for that course at that university. And then for your guests, so like yourselves as guests, like being guardians, parents, you'll have a separate timetable of different sessions that you can dip in and out. And it's all about preparing you and helping you to support the applicant as well. So do come along, do engage in those. And if you're still looking for an option and you want to visit another university, do check out our website and come along to one of our informal visit days that we have coming up. So we know that students are very much still thinking about, oh, where to study, what to study, and these kind of things. And we are here to help. So there's a couple more dates coming up. And do check out the latest with regards to our entry requirements, because there has been quite a bit of change around those for many, many of our courses. So that is everything from me. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for listening. I will stop sharing now and I will hand over back over to Mrs. Roberts.
Okay, thanks, Lewis. That's really comprehensive. There haven't been, we've been doing this for a few years now, there haven't been many questions in the chat at all.
Okay.
So I don't know if people have been, I don't know if I've made a mistake on the chat allowing people access to it. So please do feel free to unmute if you wanted to ask a question, or raise your hand through the Teams facility. But basically the questions that have been asked about the repayments being repaid together. In the future, student finance actually see it that you took out one loan. It's just that they distribute the money to the student to live on and they give the money to the university to pay the fees, but then they see it all as one thing that you end up paying back. And then I have just added a link and it's very easy to find. It literally took me 10 seconds to Google, from UCAS, and they have got a link on there for student finance which lists the evidence. But when you fill that in as a pet, so I've gone through this myself with having my sons at university. So basically your young person, and I'll answer, Susie, the answer is yes to that as well. I'll read that out in a second. But what happens is the young person creates their student finance account, and then they put in your email address as a parent, and then that triggers for you to fill in your part. So all students are entitled to a minimum maintenance loan, and Lewis did show that on a slide, what the minimums were. So, for example, in London, it's something like 6,500, and then it's scaled depending on your household income, and the maximum you could get is 13,000. So yes, that's the London one I've just quoted because I know that one personally off the top of my head. And then it changes out of London, and then it changes again living from home. We haven't got as many NHS applications from MV as I would like, really. It's which is a real shame, because we know the NHS have got a recruitment crisis, but nationally we know that young people aren't choosing those roles. But yeah, thank you, Lewis. Yeah, so that shows those minimums, how much you would get.
That's based on 2023
but
figures,
yeah, the NHS applicants really do need to look carefully and make sure that they operate asking for that. And then also all students, I've just been answering emails, so Lewis, apologies if you did go into this in detail, but all students who have a dyslexia diagnosis, be aware that you are entitled to the disabled student allowance. It's not often lump sums of money in the same way. It's sometimes them buying things for you. So, for example, but if you are a young person that gets disability benefits already, then that is extra things you can apply for. So, for example, it might be taxi vouchers to save having to get public transport. It can be a printer or a laptop being provided, those sorts of things. So just be aware that you know, any learning difficulties or any medical conditions, there's the opportunity to apply for that. It's all on the student finance. So what happens after results day, we're actually doing for the students. I mean, if you think that would be, I'm actually doing with the students, tutors are doing next week with the students. What happens after results day is very, very straightforward. I'll be completely honest, because more of the work happens before. Do you mean in terms of student finance, Kathy? Is that what you're referring to, or you mean just university in general? I don't know if you want to answer in the chat. So the paperwork is all done, really. That's what happens. It's as soon as a student has firmed their university, the university knows 2 days before they know what their exam results are. So on the morning of results day, their UCAS track has updated, and then it's all done individually. The student will get the information from the university that they need to complete. Student finance happens automatically. As long as you've met the deadline by May, then what happens is students, really, the paperwork they require, I hope I'm answering your question appropriately, but what you have to do when you enroll at university is have your formal ID, so you take along your passport. You don't need to take your exam results because they've automatically got them, and they might ask for other information that students will have. And then they're automatically enrolled. They'll get their student ID for that university. That usually happens then, it's Freshers Week. And then student finance, just is, yeah, so student finance is just told that you're now at that university, and I get told at that point that you enrolled, and I see the destinations, and then I'm told if students drop out or if they move to a different university, etc. That's all done through that. So it's all very smooth, actually. Just having done it from a teacher and a parent point of view. The big thing for me as a parent of students at university is to make sure they don't forget to reapply, because it automatically goes to them. So the thing that can catch out maybe a student who's moved away from home and has maybe been used to you giving them a bit of a nudge for things that need to be done, when they are at university next February and March, they will need to do their reapplication, or they won't get their fees paid for year 2, and they have to do the same for year 3. So that's really important. They'll get the reminders, so they've got to do that, but that's something that's you know, we have to cut those apron strings and let them do it themselves. So any more questions? So we are in limbo. We always are, because it's anything that's government organised. We're always in limbo with getting the information. Gareth and Lewis are nodding, but we know this in education. So they haven't released these figures. They'll be released any day as to what the actual figures are going to be for 2024 entry. And they don't even tell us the exact date of when it's going to open. So I will send a text message out to parents to say that student finance is now open. I would highly recommend that you just get it done as soon as possible. And then I will send out a reminder that the deadline is sort of a week away or something, or 2 weeks away when we get to May. And then they have to release the figures for when it opens.
Mrs. Roberts, will that be on MCAS or will that be via an email?
I'll send it out as a text message.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I find that when things are really urgent, I think it's best that we text you. Yeah. I think it automatically goes on to MCAS, then Nicole as well. I think it logs on there for you as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, I just wanted to add, Lewis, what we said privately at the beginning. just in case your son or daughter chooses to defer and goes to university in 2025 instead, all of this might change. There is quite a lot of talk about student finance changing, and there's something, Lewis, tell me the exact, what are they calling it? Lifelong learning funding. What's the correct name?
It's called the lifelong entitlement.
Lifelong entitlement.
LLE,
we don't know how it's
for
going to look.
short.
LLE. We don't know how it's going to look. It's something that's being mooted at the minute as a change, but just have on your radar that if they leave, have a gap year, decide to defer, don't think, oh, well, we did the talk last year with MV, we know how it works. I would keep following it on social media because we don't know what changes are on their way.
Yeah, and I wish we did, but we don't at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, absolutely. Keep an eye on those social media.
What would we do without it?
There you go.
Okay, well, I think I'll say if anybody wants to add anything else into the chat, then please do. If you want to email me separately, then absolutely feel free. But otherwise, we'll say good evening and yeah, we'll get the dinner on.
Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, can I just say something? Sorry. With the trans, you know, if they're living at home, does none of this finance covers the transport there and back, does it, to university?